I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. In the last video, I created a factory for smart plating and another for the versatile framework. They are only making 4 a minute each, but that should be enough for a while. Today I'll be creating a factory for the last Phase 2 space elevator part, automated wiring. With some alternate recipes, I can make this entirely from iron. While that is building up the amount I need, I'll start replacing my temporary factories with permanent ones. This will be the end of Phase 2. We are back in the rocky desert. I mentioned at the end of the video that I was going to be back and using this node, and well, here we are. Since I'm here and it's another space elevator part, I figure might as well just do it close to this one. And I don't actually need a pure node for this. I could have used a normal node, but I wanted to keep these close because in the future I'll probably add a train station, and it'd just be easier if I could send both of these to the same one. So I'm just going to keep them close. So I've already got the miner placed, but as you'll notice, it got a little bit weird right here because these nodes are so close together that there wasn't a full foundation gap, or I guess there wasn't even a full half foundation gap in between the two patterns. And so I had to lower this one, or else I would get some weird Z fighting with the patterns. So if you ever run into something like this, it's actually pretty easy to do. Let's attach this one here. And say for whatever reason, I wanted this one to be just slightly lower so that I didn't have some weird Z fighting issues. The easiest way I know how to do it is using the pillars and the road barrier. So go ahead and place it right in the center. Delete the foundation. Place a second one. And then grab your road barrier. And now what you're looking to do is get it just lower than the normal height. And so usually once it turns yellow, you're low enough, but I usually go just, another like pixel or two, just in case. And go ahead and place that there. And now what you can do is delete your beams. And now if I take my foundation and I hit H, when I place it, well, the fix-it's going to be weird. Well, this is actually a decent example. So since there's a few pixels difference between the height of just the normal foundation and then the lip of it, we've gotten it to clip the other part below, but not the whole thing. So you can see you would probably have to drop it down just a few more pixels, but that's another way you can avoid Z fighting with a lot of the other foundations. So unfortunately, one side was just going to have a little bit of its pattern cut out. This entire issue is because I can't use a pattern on the half foundations, or else I could easily have gotten around it. But oh well, maybe one day we'll get that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet. Even though I need 1/10 of these compared to the other two space elevator parts, I'm actually making 50% more. I'll be making 6 a minute. And since I can make this entirely out of iron ore, I figured I might as well just make as much as I can with the Mark III belts and just one miner. We don't need to scale things up too big yet. And luckily for me, these are actually worth a decent amount of sync points. So after I complete that 100, I'll start racking up some coupons. Alright, step 1, I need some foundations. And we're not going to go too far. I figure right here has got a nice amount of flat space that I can work with. So let me get some foundations placed and we'll get the first floor going. I'm not entirely sure how big this factory needs to be, and that's partially because this first floor might get a little bit interesting. I only need 4 smelters, but it's the load balancing for the iron I'm not sure how big is going to take. So I figure I'll just give myself too much space, and then I can just delete the extra parts that I don't need, and then we'll just kind of go from there. I think that'll be a better way to do it. So let's go ahead and start with those 4 smelters, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them 1.5 foundations in, because that'll be plenty of space to do the load balancing here. We'll need very little space for that. So that'll be able to just be a splitter here, and then splitter there. And the easy part is done, but let's go ahead and set our recipes. Forgot to do that right away. So iron ingots, let's make sure we add our power shards first. I need 232 across 4 machines, so 58 each. And to group them all together, I'm just gonna do 3 mergers in a line, and then we'll do all the balancing. Although, I think we'll go ahead and rotate this one this way. Out of here, we have 232 ingots. Now here's the fun part. I need 160 to go to iron wire, and 72 to go to iron pipes. And putting it in terms of fractions, we've got 9 29ths and 20 29ths. And I promise that actually sounds worse than it is. So normally I would go 1, but I need a little bit more space here, so I'm actually going to end up going a little bit farther. So we're going to place 1 splitter here, and mark 3 into there. And anytime you're doing any of the weird splits, just like a 5-way split, a 29 isn't actually any different. I'm going to split it 30 ways, and then loop one of them back to the very beginning. Now thankfully I still have 1 opening on this belt right here, and this one isn't close to being full. So I'll be able to plug that extra bit into this merger. So this right here is our very first splitter. So what we're going to do is split this into thirds. And so what I can do is just place a splitter right here. And I'm going to need a Mark II out of all 3 of these. I need to make this a merger. I don't know why I said splitter. There we go. So if we're going to split this 30 ways, this is going to be 10 and that's going to be 10. And that right there is my 160. And so with this one, I just need to do a 10-way split, and one of them is going to get looped back to that merger. And doing a 10-way split isn't too bad, because we're just going to split it in half first. So that right there is 5. And I don't need to do anything. That's just going to go straight into a merger. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Now the other 5, we're going to do the old 5-way split. So we start with the merger. And then we need 1 splitter to split that one in half. And then 1 last one that we need to use all 3 of them for. I'm going to grab a merger and place it right in front of this splitter. So this is getting the 3/5. So there's 3. We're going to go ahead and delete that belt and use that one now. So that was 5. So now I have 8. So I just need 9. And so there's my 9. But I got to remember to use both of these, right? So one of them needs to loop back to this merger to complete the 5-way split for this, right? The other one needs to go back to the very beginning. I'm going to go ahead and place another one right there so that I can make my stubby little lift here. Go ahead and delete it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this merger. Delete the merger. Put it in good old straight mode. And there's the 30th basically that I needed to loop back. I really thought this was going to take up a lot more space. So I'm going to be able to delete quite a bit. So I definitely want a little bit of space because I want to put my catwalks and have enough space to be able to move the lifts up and down. So let's go ahead and get rid of at least that. And then on the sides, I think this is more than we need. So we can just go ahead and chop off 1. I think this will end up being actually a 6x6. Really thought this was going to take up more space. Let me build the walls in the next floor and put in an elevator, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the constructors. I got a little carried away and went ahead and figured this out. I figured it was a short little trip, and since it's only 1 belt, I could just use the half foundations. And I kind of like it. And we've got the second floor and my elevator to be able to get up or down, and the familiar catwalks. I really do like building off of these. Now we're on to the constructors. I need to make iron pipes, iron wire, and then most of that wire is going to be turned into cable. Now that I'm looking at the numbers, I think this is the floor that gets a little bit more interesting. Alright, so with the layout down below, I can just delete this. That's where they're coming out of, is on this side. So I want the inputs facing this way. Basically the opposite direction. And just to give myself enough space, because I know constructors take up 1 full foundation, so we'll just line them up here. Let's go ahead and line these up with, yeah, second foundation. That should give me enough space, right? Oh yeah, these are kind of big. Well, that is 5 out of the 8 constructors I need on this floor. Well, it's time to knock down a wall. I could add another floor. I could, well, do a whole lot of different things. But I also think that this is just going to be interesting. If I make random floors bigger, it just gives me some fun aesthetics to work around. So what I'm going to do is add 2 more, and I think that should be big enough. Well, sort of. Alright, so let's set some recipes. These first 6 are going to be iron wire. I need a total of 288, 6 machines, 48 each. There we go, yeah, 6. Alright, and our 7th one here, we'll be making the steel pipes. And this one, thankfully, I don't need any power shards because I only need 18. Oh yeah, And that's because that was my only recipe and I wasn't even paying attention. But really, I need to come over here to the MAM and go ahead and take my iron pipe recipe. Underclocked even more. Alright, 72 iron ingots into 18 iron pipes. But no coal required. 6 machines load balancing is pretty nice and easy. I'm going to go ahead and just place one in front of those 3. There we go, one in front of those. And then right here in the very center between all 6, place this one. Gotta love the simple load balancing. Now I just need to plug up a lift straight into that splitter, and then the other line is just going to go straight into the one constructor. So I can figure that out later. But now I need to turn most of this wire into cable. Out of the 288 wire I'm making, 240 of it is going to get turned into cable, and then 48 of it will be used for stators. And if 48 sounds familiar, that's because that's what each one is making. So thankfully, I don't really have to do much load balancing. I can leave the very last one kind of on its own here, and then I'm going to group 5 of them together. And because I don't have a ton of space, let's bring everything to this very center one. Go to place a merger there, and then I can place a merger on either side facing in. Out of here is going to be 240. Now, thankfully for me, I only need 2 constructors. And so let's go ahead and place one there, and we'll spin this one around. See if we can make them a little bit more even there. So since I only need 2 of them, we'll split them like this. So 240 goes into there, which is going to be 120 into there and 120 into there. Set these for cable, 200%. Originally I was going to have them group up like this, and then that way I have this pointing inwards and it'd be easy to go up. But I already know that that's not actually how it's going to go. I'm going to end up placing it just that 1 meter off so I get a little bit of a gap. Let's see. So that would be 60 cable from this side and 60 cable from this side. And eventually this is going to go around here before it gets sent up to the next floor. Now that I've torn apart half my walls, I need to rebuild this floor, and then I'll add the next one, which will be the assemblers and the final floor. This floor only needs 2 assemblers, so I decided to go ahead and shrink it back to the original 6x6 size. And then that gives me something fun to decorate around. So for right now, I just have this kind of extra roof being asphalt, but I'm not totally happy with how it came out. But I don't want to spend too much time fussing over that now. Let's go ahead and get the rest of the machines built, and then I'll worry about all that decorating. I only need 2 assemblers, so we'll just go ahead and have this one right there, and then we'll just go ahead and spin this one around, and it is going to be facing this way. Make sure that they're nice and even. Yep, looks good. This first one is going to be making my stators, and I need 1 power shard because I need 6 a minute. This is going to take the 18 steel pipes and the 48 wire, and we can go ahead and just plug that straight into there. The automated wiring, overclock this out the wazoo, and there's the 6 a minute, only needs 1 machine, so the 6 stators and the 120 cable. So that cable is going to go ahead and come up right over here, which is why I brought it around to that side down below. And that'll get plugged in right there. And then for this assembler, let's go ahead and make this look nice. And I'll have those pop up right here, which should miss, yep, that'll miss the catwalk. And both of these can be Mark 1. Now all I have to do is just pop downstairs. And those 2 need these 2. So that's pretty easy. Let's go ahead and just have this one lined up like that, and then this one can be lined up that way. And so we'll do the very far one. Just line these both up. Make sure that the bottom is facing the right direction. And then we go up to the top. That goes there, that goes there. And then the second one is pretty much just as easy. Do the same thing. And then for the last one, it's just barely going to fit in here. So we'll place that there. And then thankfully, with good old straight mode, it just barely fits in this area. And there's the 120 cable. This one turned out to probably be the easiest of the three. Instead of adding the storage and the smart sink up here, I think I'm going to do the same thing I did with that one right there. And I'm just going to add a little extra area down here for the sink and the storage. And I think that'll just make it a little bit easier when it comes time to put that on a train later. So let me build that out, do the decorating, and then we'll go on a quick little tour. And here we are. I tried to make the front a little bit more exciting, so added some fans and some pillars just to break up the plain concrete wall. And because on the other side of this is the sink, and so windows probably weren't going to look great, so I only had space for one, so I thought the reinforced window would look good in that spot. The rest of them I used the full frame windows. They are still probably my favorite windows. Just nice and clean. But let's go ahead and take a look. So right here in the entrance, we've got the storage container. And the one thing, I don't think I showed off with any of them, but this is what I've done for all of the space elevator parts. It's just much more dramatic with this one. I just filled it up with a whole bunch of concrete. I only need 100, which would be 2 stacks. And that way, instead of filling up this entire container full of automated wiring that I just don't need, I can get it sinking just so much faster this way. Since the floors really aren't that tall, I like to do the power on the ceiling. On the top floor, I made some changes. So instead of it coming to a very point, it's flat. I know, big change. And then I did the same thing with just a row of the 4-meter signs, just with a different color. So I decided to make it a balcony instead of having that weird kind of divot. And the other benefit to that, in my opinion, was it kept the spacing the same. Because walls are 8 meters wide, but 4 meters tall. And that way, this gap is 8 meters, this gap is 8 meters, and then this gap is 8 meters, and it just looks more uniform to me. And then I just went with the small, these are actually the concrete pillars that I painted chrome. I actually hardly ever use the metal ones. Now that we have so many options with the colors and then the fun textures, you know, with the chrome and the metallic and all that fun stuff, I pretty much only use the concrete pillars now. They're just so flexible. That's the tower. Kept it pretty simple. It's not very flashy, but hey, we have to have some sort of baseline so that my later factories look better. My favorite part of every factory, watching it come to life. Now all I need to do is plug up this miner to this miner, and that will bring everything together. Almost missed the very first one. Thought it was going to take longer. Nope, pretty quick. Excellent. It only took a few more cycles for it to level out, and looks like everything is staying, normally I would say green, but green and white, I guess. There they go, starting to pile up. With 6 a minute, it really won't take long to build up my 100. But I'm not going to wait around. I really want to start deleting some of these temporary factories. And even with only having the Mark III belts, I think I can do something. As we admire some shots of the new factory, let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet for the next one. I have created a plan that's going to replace my iron plates, rods, screws, steel pipes, wire, cable, and reinforced iron plates all in one tower. Now the rates aren't crazy high or anything, but I honestly think these are going to be high enough to get me through the playthrough. And using some alternate recipes, I can do this entire thing using only 270 iron ore. Sometimes you just gotta play around with the amounts until you just get nice even numbers. And I'm really happy with this factory. Funny thing about this new factory though, is I've actually already built it once. And I was onto the decorating phase, and there were parts about it that I liked. But the mistake I made was building the entire tower and then realizing just how much space I was going to need for the storage. The world is huge and it's really hard to run out of space, but I really kind of like the theme of going more vertical. And so I built this and then I slept on it and I decided, you know what? Let's just start over. And we're back. So those were the first 2 towers out here in the desert. And just right over here, I've got 3 normal nodes. And this tower only needs 1 of them. And I've got my somewhat oddly shaped 9x10 platform. So the base of it is going to be a bit bigger than my other towers. Because I'm making so many different items here, I think there's going to be 7 in total different parts that are going to storage. The base of the tower is going to be a little bit bigger than some. I'm just going to grab my 3 industrial storage blueprint. And the nice thing with these are 3 of them will fit in a 2 foundation area. So I'm going to give myself 1 more foundation here in the back. No reason to make it super cramped. Like I said, I got plenty of space. And this is going to be much more space efficient than the other layout I had. So I could nudge these over by a meter if I wanted to keep them just so I could keep the spacing uniform. But instead I'm going to leave the gap there and I might try to work around it later. So that's enough for 3 different items. And now I'm going to mirror it on this side. That's 6 sets of 3 industrial storage containers each. But I did say we were going to do 7 items in total. But the very last one is just going to get a single one. Since I'm not going to be making a lot, I want to have a decent amount available at any time. The idea is all of these will get hooked up to dimensional depots. That way, even though I'm not making a lot, I still have a lot available at any one time when I do need to use them. And then they'll just slowly refill when I'm not. And you could probably even get away with not automating the screws, because you really don't need that many. I think there's a couple equipment parts you need it for, and then it's the awesome shops. So not a whole lot of uses, and so I think 1 storage container is going to be more than I will ever need. But I also won't ever have to worry about him again, and I like that. Alright, so later on down the line, most likely there's going to be an awesome sink somewhere over here. And with the smart splitters, I can send the overflow all the way over to the sink when they're full. But I can figure out where that's going to go later. Let's go ahead and add the 2nd floor and start placing some machines. Now it has a 2nd floor. And of course, my trusty elevator. So that's going to be the front of the factory. And then I decided to push the industrial storage containers back 1 foundation because I realized I didn't want them to go to the very edge because I was probably going to need to have the belts, like the overflow belt and whatnot, go this way to go over to the sink. And that would be easier than having it go across the front. Alright, so I need 9 smelters. So since the iron is coming from right here, I think I'm going to use that node. I'll have it come up this way, and then it'll feed in right here. And load balancing 9 is super easy, so I really don't need a lot of space on this end. So I'm just going to give myself plenty of space on that side, so I can do the little bit of load balancing that I need. So I could have overclocked these so that I could use less. But if you look at the numbers on the spreadsheet, everything will be really easy if I just keep these at 30 for each one. And because I have the space, I am just moving these out 1 meter apart from each other, instead of putting them just right next to each other. These are at 100%, so just copy and paste. Load balancing 9 is just really nice and easy. So we get 1 in the middle of those 3, and then in the middle of these 3, we get another one. And then in the middle of the last 3, we put 1. And then right here, we can go ahead and just give us some space. There's the last one. So since each one of these needs 30, it'll be mark 1 into all of these. And so going into each of these splitters needs to be 90. And then I can go ahead and grab my conveyor wall hole and just put that right there. And this one will be where the 270 gets plugged in. Well, at least I get to start off easy. I need the iron to go in a number of different places. But instead of doing the load balancing now, what I'm going to do is add the next floor so we can start adding more machines so that I can see what amounts need to go where. So instead of load balancing a certain amount here and then realizing that I need to plug it in on the other side, I can just make things a little bit neater, hopefully. So let's add the 3rd floor. I was thinking about making the 3rd floor a little bit smaller because I don't quite need all this space. but I'd probably only be able to cut off like one foundation on the top and one on the side, unless I really wanted to try to make it cramped, and I don't. This floor needs 6 constructors, and that's not even all of them. So the smelters down below are outputting this way. So with this floor, it'd be easiest if the constructors face this way. And since I only need 6, and like I said, I'm going to have a little bit of extra space, I can just give myself that space on the side, and I think we'll just put these all next to each other. So we'll do 1, 2. And we've got that 1.5 foundations on either side. So we got the spacing right. Let's set some recipes. So these first 3 on the right, I am going to do the iron wire. Go ahead and just add a bunch of power shards and let the machine do the math for me. 126 across 3 machines, 42 for each one. And let's just go ahead and add a splitter so I know that they're all connected. Okay, so those 3 are done. I need the wire for a couple different things, and so I'm going to have to do some load balancing with those. With these 3 constructors, I'm just making stuff and it's just going to go straight into storage. So the first one here, I'm going to use iron rods and make 25 a minute, which is definitely more than I need. And so is 20 screws a minute, I think. But that's okay. I'll never have to worry about these again. And the last one here, I'm going to use the iron pipe, and I think 20 a minute should be plenty. The wire needs to go to 3 different places. I need it to go to my storage. Some of it is also going to get turned into cable, and then some of it will be used in the stitched iron plate to create my reinforced iron plates. Just like the floor below, I'm going to wait to do the load balancing just so I know which amounts kind of need to go where. And hopefully I can make it a little less messy than I did in the first attempt at this tower. So I'll be right back with the 4th floor. This floor only needs 3 constructors and 1 assembler. So I was able to bring the floor space down quite a bit, and now we've just got a huge balcony. And then the very top of the tower will only have to be this section right here instead of this whole thing. For the constructors, we're going to go ahead and get them, I think, pretty much right in the middle. Yeah, that should be 3. That looks good. And like I said, I just need 3 of them. And then let's switch to an assembler. And then this one can go just right in the middle of this foundation. And that looks pretty centered. This end constructor is going to be making my cable. And it's going to be making a whopping 18, which is a pretty random number. When I was playing around with the numbers in my spreadsheet, planning this whole thing out, I realized that for cable, that if I use the normal cable recipe and the iron wire recipe, it would be easiest if I made this in multiples of 9, and that would give me nice even numbers to work with. Now with the iron plates, both of these are going to be overclocked to 50%. Each one will output 30 iron plates, and right here, I'm going to use my stitched iron plate recipe, loaded up with power shards, and we're going to be making 9 a minute. I only need 2, perfect. This will intake 30 iron plates and then 60 wire. So we'll get the 60 wire from the floor below, and 30 iron plates we can get from right here. I need 60 wire, so let's go ahead and just place this right here. So I know that's where I'm going to need to plug that up from the floor below. Get the lift hole there, and this will need to be 90 iron ingots, since each one needs 45. And that'll have to come from the bottom floor. And then this one right here, let's just make things even. And we'll line it up with that one. And this is going to need my 36 wire. Alright, so before we do anything else, let's go ahead and just put this one right here. That should be in the right spot. Yep. Alright, so this is my 90 ingots, so I know I'm going to need to work around that. Just easier if I put that there now. This right here needs 36 wire, and the other floor hole over there needs 60. Let's go ahead and work with this end one. Each of these constructors is outputting 42 wire. 36 out of the 42. That obviously looks really awful. Another way to look at it is I need to take 6 out of here, which would be 1/7. Let's do some load balancing. So just like a 5-way split, we're going to start with a merger. You can go ahead and send that 42 into there. And then from here, we add 1 splitter. Since we're looking to split it 8 ways and then loop one of them back, 8 is really easy. Since it's a power of 2, you're going to split it in half, and then in half, and then in half. So 2, 4, and then with this last one, I'm actually just going to go out a little bit farther just because I know I need the space. Alright, and thankfully with the amount so low, I can go ahead and just use Mark 1 for all of these. So if we just think about this in terms of just the 8-way split, this is going to have 4, this is going to have 2, and this is going to have 2 singles. And I want to group up 6 of them together. So I'm going to go ahead and place a merger right here. So we can group up the 4 and the 2. And out of here will be my 36. And so if I grab this, where I need to plug the 36 in. If I go up to the roof, just so happens to be in line. And the reason I needed to move this splitter out so much is this one is going to be the one that goes around and loops back to the first merger. Nice simple 7-way split, but there's still 1/7 here. So let's go ahead and group that up with the next one. So for this next one, I'll go ahead and place a merger in line with the other one. So 42 into there. And this is the 6 that I split off from this one. So now I have 48. And if I do another 8-way split, I get 6s on each of those. So I could combine 5 of them to make my 30, and then group the rest of them, and I'd have my 60. So let's go ahead and do the same thing, and I'm going to go ahead and place 3 more splitters. So there's the first one. There's the second one, and there's the last one. Just like the last one, this has 4, this has 2, and this has 2 singles. This is probably where you could lay it out in a whole bunch of different ways, but this is the one I went with. I'm going to place a merger right on the top of the middle splitter. And this is the one that's going to have 5. So we're going to grab the 4, and easiest way to do that is just put another splitter merger right on top, create my short little lift here, delete the merger, and send that right in. So there's the 4. So now I just need one more. So out of this one, we'll do the same thing. And there's that one. But I still need to use this output and this output. And we'll combine those with this last one. So there's 42. This is 12, so 54. And then this right here would be 6. And there's my 60. So from here, I'm just going to add the lift to the ceiling. And then same with this one, spin it this way. And then we can just connect the two. And there's the 60 wire. And out of this one right here is the 30 that's going to storage. I just need to do the load balancing for the smelters, but while we're on this floor, let me show you how I'm going to group together the final products. Originally, I was going to have each product have its own belt and then just kind of show them all off on the front of the building. But I've done that plenty of times and they aren't going to be completely full belts, so it's not quite as exciting, I feel. And if you're making 7 different parts in one factory and they're all at pretty low quantities, that in my opinion is the perfect time to use a sushi belt. So I'm just going to use the edge right here so that I can still see it from my walkway. And I'm just going to put some mergers right in the middle of these foundations, just to space things out. Alright, and then I'm just going to connect each one to its own merger here. And this should go right around that one. Perfect. If all of the storage gets completely full, in total, I think these parts add up to 150. So I'm just going to use a Mark III for the main line. Place a conveyor wall here, and then I'm just going to take this final one, do something like that. And then I'll do the same thing for the top floor. I'll group all 3 of those things together, and then I'll be able to run that down, and I can actually use the vertical merger. Okay, fine. So that's almost the entire reason I'm doing the sushi belt, is it gave me an excuse to use the new vertical merger. And I think it's going to look great. And then I just need one last piece to plug in. And so for that one, we'll keep the spacing for everything even. We're going to make a right turn. Needs 2 meters. So we'll place that one there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 meters back, we'll go up 1 height. And that should be just right for old stubby here. And that can plug into there. There we go. Works one way. And there's the 30 wire combining with my rod, screws, and pipes. And that'll be sent down to storage. Alright, last load balancing. Let's go to the smelters. But before I go downstairs, let's go ahead and set up our floor holes so I at least know where things are going. And hopefully I can remember what's going where. Okay, so the very first one needs 5. And the second one needs 25. Hey, that adds up to 30. This one needs 80, so this one's going to need to be Mark II. And then the very last one, well, 23 and a third, that's going to equal 70 for all 3 of them. So we'll make this one a Mark II as well. All right, so 5, 25, 80, 70. It's not too bad. Just go ahead and jump down. All right, so that first one needs 5. Well, that shouldn't be too hard. And I've got plenty of space, so let's just add a splitter there and a splitter here. And it should be basically that easy. So 30 into here. I made a quick decision. I am actually going to flip these around. So the rods are going to be on the first machine. So the 25 is the first one. The second one is going to be my cast screws that only needs 20. Take my power shards back. That's all I needed to do was switch those two, and let me show you why. Because the smelters are so close to each other and I need one merger here, I thought it would be easier if I was able to put the merger right here on the side. Okay, so 30 into this splitter. That means 15 there and then 15 there. So into here, we've got 15. So if I split it all 3 ways, we've got 5, 5. Here's my 25. And then out of here is 5. So let's go ahead and set up these lifts. We'll spin this one this way. And then this one can go straight ahead. There's the 25 I need for the rods. This one we can get it sent straight in like that. That way we've got plenty of room here. Alright, so the 5 and the 25 are done. Next one is 80. So that shouldn't be too bad. Let's go ahead and grab a merger and put it in front of that one. So that's 30, there's 60. And now I just need 20. One more splitter in front of there. So if we plug in 30 into that one. And if we use all 3 outputs, we get 10 on each one. So now I've got 70. Go ahead and add one more merger. So 70 into there, and then 10 into there. How do I always run out of the parts that I'm about to make? Time to get more iron plates and reinforced iron plates. And I'm back. Alright, so now we can connect this up. And it looks a little funny. Let's just bring this out just a touch. Yeah, I think that looks better. Last 2 floor holes. This one needs 70. That one needs 120. So the 70 is real easy now that we've already done that other load balancing. We just need a merger here. So there's 30. There's 60. There's 70. And yeah, let's go ahead and just turn that one sideways. We can go from here to here. And 120 is about as easy as it gets. We just need to group up 3 of them. There's my 120. And so we'll just plug that into there. We might as well take up more space just because we have it. Oh, 120 into there and 120 into there. Before I get to the decorating, let me show you one last part. So here we are on the top floor, and this is where everything's going to get grouped together. Probably going to place a merger somewhere around here. And then we can do the Mark III into there. And then that can plug into there, and this one can plug into there. And then that one will snake around into there. Alright, now to get this to the ground floor is where it gets a little bit weird. So this tower is just over the max height of the lift. That means it's time for Old Faithful, the infinite lift trick. And might as well go ahead and center it since there's only one lift. And we can go ahead and place this like that into there. Because the tower is so tall, I have to use this unless I wanted to use 2 lifts. And that's just going to look kind of weird, right? Well, sort of. There's a couple ways to do this. So now, if I drag it down, it's still going to have the same problem, right? I can't actually get all the way to the bottom. But if I start here at the bottom, I want it to go this way, and then we're going to go that way. I can get it to connect. which is great because then I should be able to face it this way, which is the way I want it. So when you're in the elevator, you can see all the products going down. But unfortunately, when I place it, it's just going to spin it back around. Bummer. And now let's go ahead and give myself a platform. We'll just place that right there temporarily, and let's go up and take a look at it. I've got my handy little platform here, right on the same level as where this is coming out. And now if I grab my merger, I was really hoping with the most recent patch that this was going to get fixed, even though I didn't see it in the patch notes. If you use the conveyor lift floor hole, it throws off the vertical splitters and mergers. So if I lock it in place, it turns red because it won't let you do it this way. But if I hold control and do page down, it's a 1/2 meter nudge. So, and then that lines up perfectly. So that's how much it's off. It's just off by 1/2 meter. And so this is basically how I'm going to end up doing it. You can go either, let's see, if you want it to curve down or up. I think down makes a little bit more sense. And so this is how I'm going to end up leaving it, and hopefully it's going to get patched and I can just delete this, replace it real quick, and reconnect it, and then it'll be exactly how it should be. Now, I did have one other thought. Oh, this is going to be weird, but let's do it because the game lets us. I'm just going to build a floating blueprint designer because I can. And I just don't want to have to go back up or down. Alright, so this is really weird. You're going to want to do it in the very center, or else it's going to save it off center, which is weird because most blueprints don't work like that. Okay, so if I wanted to create just a standalone blueprint of the vertical merger, I could bring it up like this. We'll rotate it so one of it's facing the front arrow, and that's as low as I can go, is right there. And so my thinking is then I just delete these two. And now I could just build off of this, right? And I could just place this in the right spot. And then technically I wouldn't even need the floor hole because then it's like one belt is only going, you know, half the distance. So let's try it. Let's delete this lift. We'll grab my V merger down. And now with the vertical nudging, I should be able to just nudge it into the right spot, right? That is the right height. It looked too low for some reason, but nope, that goes straight in. So we can get it at the right height, but I think this is where the problem is. Now I can go from here and I can connect it. Alright, and then now when I grab this one, this unfortunately, it's not supposed to clip into the ground at the lowest setting, right? That's definitely too tall. And so we basically just moved the offset alignment down to here now. And so now if I do it, I'm still gonna end up with that like 1/2 meter, and you're not gonna be able to adjust this a 1/2 meter. And so my thought was, well, then I should be able to just go from here and plug it in, except for you can switch it back and forth and it won't snap into it. It just goes straight through. Now I very well could be doing something wrong, or I'm just missing something that's super obvious. And if that's the case, please go ahead and let me know in the comments. But I tried a number of different ways and I just couldn't quite get it to work. So I think I'm going to have it be slightly offset there because I'd just rather have that short little belt be the one that's slightly up or down, and then have everything else line up a little bit neater. But when this is working, it's going to come down here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bunch of more smart splitters. And these are just going to go in a line in front of each one of these. And then the way I set these ones up is we have center output as any undefined, and then to the right is going to be whichever part I want to go in there. So for this very first one, it's the one that has the singular container and not the triple. So the very first one is going to be screws, and I can just copy and paste it and then just change the screws to this one will be the iron plates. And then that way we've got Mark III. It's going to go around, and then each time the item gets to the smart splitter where it needs to go, I'm going to make sure this is a Mark III so that this belt doesn't get backed up, even though it has plenty of wiggle room, being a 270 belt and only having like 150 items on there. But I'd much rather it just run smoothly. So this is going to be a Mark III, and then because none of the rates are that high, it really doesn't matter. But each one of these will then be set for any forward and overflow to one of the sides. And then most likely what I'll do is I'll just put like a second line of mergers on top of here. And this one will be have to be Mark 3 again. And then that'll be the overflow, and then it'll basically just kind of flow on top of that one and get around to the smart splitter over there. So for these ones, it'll be just real easy. Just add a short little lift, and then I can connect it from here into that merger. So once the storage containers fill up, the right item will get split off and then go up onto the overflow and then head on its way over to the sink. Let me get everything connected to power, add some more windows and walls and all that fun stuff, and then we'll go on a quick little tour. Well, the storage room looks a little bit different now, but it's not quite tour time yet. I'm still working away, and it's not making a ton, but we're up to a whole 22,000 sync points on average, looks like. And so they've added up to 33, and I think this is a good time to spend some of them so I can get some more toys. I did finally get the conveyor throughput monitor, so we'll be able to double check and make sure that the rates are what they're supposed to be. Even though this is expensive, I'm going to go ahead and get all of the rest of the signs. Streetlights are only one, and they can be a pretty nice touch. And I probably won't add a ton, but I'm going to go ahead and get the floodlights too, and the light control panel. Need to be able to change the colors, that's the fun part. For cosmetics, gotta find a way to use these. They just look cool. What are we at? Only 26. I really want all of these. Why do they have to be so expensive? Well, I definitely want to get the grip metal. And I've only got 2 left. Let's get the metal barriers. Alright, that's a good amount of toys. I can spice up the outside of it a little bit better now. Alright, back to work. And then it's tour time. And welcome to my new permanent iron tower. I'm getting good use out of these fans, and I threw a number on the outside here. So I decided to just use foundations as the walls for kind of the base, and I really like the look of the different materials. It feels much more, you know, kind of sturdy down at the base, and then you've got the rest of the tower, which is just using kind of the normal walls. And because the sink is just so huge, and I didn't want to make this whole section that big, I just cut a hole in the ceiling and then used a bunch of the different frame items. For the entrance, I just got 2 of the street lights, and I just angled them 45 degrees in and then kind of clipped them in the wall. But because that looks a little bit funny, I kind of framed the whole thing with the beam to help hide it a little bit. Got the lift, and I finally used those honeycomb windows. And since they both just kind of dropped off, I thought that part was a little bit weird, so now they have their own little roof. And with this top part with the beam and the light, I decided to make it its own blueprint. So when it's in a blueprint, when you attach it to a wall, none of it will actually clip through the wall. So like watch, if I place that there, but then if I were to grab a beam and do that, it's going to look very different because half of it is on the other side of the wall. And that way you just don't have the other half of the beam on the inside of the room. And we've got our balcony. If I ever decide to use hypertube cannons, this is probably a great place to put them. I should probably give them another try. But I know eventually my computer just can't handle them anymore, and then they either just don't shoot me very far and become kind of useless, or they become overpowered and they just try to send me straight up to the space station every time, and then I just lose everything being sent off the map. And so that's why I've been sticking with my zip lines. It takes a little bit longer, but I don't mind. And here's the setup for the miner. So that's just going to get fed right into there, head on up. And then I just framed the lift with the small frame pillars so that it looked much more supported and not so weird just being a lift by itself like that. Nothing here is all that special, but this is the one thing where I feel like I could probably show you. So in case you ever want to close off a corner using foundations, because I really wanted to use the corner ramps, but then there's not really a great piece that fills in this gap. So if you want to use foundations to do it, you use the trusty beam. So not in default, but I want it in freeform, and I'm going to grab right in the center of the foundation. And you can tell because if you go to the corner, go down 2 meters, there you go. And then we're going to go straight across to the same spot on this side. And we can go ahead and place it. I'm sure somebody's curious. If you want the super dark black, it's super easy. Go over to your custom swash, hit edit, change the very bottom number to -1. And then my advice is then go ahead and hit the little save icon, name it whatever you want, and then when you go to this menu, now you just have it saved. So now I have dark black as its own, and it makes it just much easier to switch to in the future if I want it. So that's how you can get this really dark black. So now if I grab one of these foundations and I get it to snap to the end of the beam, hit H to lock it in place, I'm going to nudge it back 4 meters and then to the right 4 meters. And that will be perfectly lined up right with the edge of this. You can't nudge this one. What you want to do is do the exact same thing with the other side of the beam. So lock it in place, go back 4, and then to the left 4. And there you go. You can delete your beam. And this works great for just a small corner like this, but really you can use this to create any angle you want. It's a fantastic trick. Gotta love the painted beam. Alright, so we've got our stairs, and I just love these roll-up gates. They're so cool. So there is a little bit of Z fighting right here. I should probably move that to like the other side or something. I don't normally do this where I just clip walls straight through something, but the storage units, for whatever reason, I don't know, it doesn't bother me nearly as much. Probably because there's no moving parts to it. But I really wanted to make this its own hallway, and that way you just didn't see kind of all the mess back there. I just kind of wanted it to be its own little room. So we've got our elevator. So if we go on this side, we've got our light control panel. So I can change the lights in the front. So the lift comes down, and here's all of our items. And then they get sorted into the correct container. And you can actually take this walkway all the way around. The bottom one is the main one. If the top one is full, that means pretty much everything is sinking. So this is in the middle at the back. And then you can come on the other side, and we've got the other 3. And then on this side, it just brings you to the back of the sink. We've got our sink in a shop, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out. So let's head back on out here. I've brought power through the factory, and let's just take a look. I haven't checked it out in a while. Oh, you love to see it. Oh, that's going to go away as soon as I start getting trains online, but man, I just love when the power graph looks like this. Ah, good stuff. Okay, so now we just need to connect this to that. And here we go. It took the screws so long to get to 100%, but by the time I made it to the top floor, everything was on. We're still flickering a little bit, so I'm just going to give it another minute and make sure that everything's staying on at 100 and there's no issues. But it's looking good so far. Well, I figured the throughput monitor is probably the best way to double check. Gotta use the tools they gave us. So we've got 25 iron rods per minute, 20 screws. It was flickering between 19 and 20 for a little bit, but now I've got a solid 20 steel pipes per minute. This one's still flickering between 29 and all the way up to 31, so not quite sure. I'm gonna have to keep my eye on it. And on the top floor, we've got the 18 cables per minute, 30 iron plates, and my 9 reinforced iron plates per minute. Factory's looking good. Well, it looks like we're going to fluctuate between 151 and 153 here on the total belt that's going into storage. Oh, even up to 154, I guess. The total number is 152. So it's looking good. Everything is getting split off to where it's supposed to go, and we're going to slowly fill up all these storage units. And on this side, everything's going smooth too. I'm just using the 2-meter signs, and I find it easiest with these signs to make them matte and turn the emission strength down to like 1. I think off makes it like really dull. But that right there isn't too bad to me. If you turn it up to like 3 in glossy, some of the pictures are just really hard to see what it is. So I like 1 in matte. And now for some of these, like iron plates, I'm definitely going to add a dimensional depot and Well, I've got 6, so let's go ahead and do that. And Mark 3 is the most you'd ever really need. And now I never have to come back and change it because the max upload speed for the dimensional depots is 240 and that lift does 270. But in many, many hours from now, when I have almost all the Mercer spheres, pretty much all of these are probably going to end up with their own dimensional depots attached to them. But for now, one definitely helps, and I should probably do it for the reinforced iron plates as well, just because the belt materials are always really easy to run out of. That is some good progress, and I am really happy with the way this factory turned out. But there's one more factory I want to build before I move on to the next phase. I want to build one that'll take care of motors and rotors. Again, not making them in very high quantity, only 4 rotors and 3 motors. But with these alternate recipes, I can do the entire thing with only 212 iron ore. So I think adding this one next to the other iron tower just makes sense. And here I've got the foundations laid out, so just right next to the iron tower. And we're just going to use the next iron node over. I may end up having to change the dimensions, but right now it's a 7x7. I really like the way that tower turned out with the storage on the bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing here, even though I'm only making 2 items. I'm going to basically copy it, although this one isn't going to have a hallway. I'm just going to put them right next to each other, which means I can put this one all the way to the edge because I won't need the belt to run this way. And I'm just going to give myself 1 foundation here in the back. In the next phase, I'll actually automate the AI limiters. Go ahead and place that one there. And here's the storage. At most, this is going to have 3-dimensional depots. I can't ever see needing more than 3. And so really, I just need this to be able to go up that high. So with it that high, a great thing you can do is just place them and then go into your camera mode and let's see. If I stick with this height, it's just going to clip into the very top, just barely, I think. And now I can double check. And that looks good to me. So it looks like the very top of it is going to get chopped off, but where it gets chopped off just looks really good. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and go with that height. So this right here is going to be the height of the next floor. And because I need so few machines for this whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and just build the whole tower, and then we can just do all the machines in one go. The dimensions did change just a little bit. The main tower is going to be a 6x6, and then I'm going to have a little bit more space here. And in fact, I think this is actually going to end up getting extended just a little bit more. The stairs are really just so I can easily get up here, because I do need room for a sink. And I am well aware they are much bigger than most of the floors that I make. So we've got our elevator, and then we've got our 3 floors. So we'll do smelters, constructors, and then the assemblers at the top. Sticking with my very consistent theme, sorry. I promise I'll try to make the towers look a little bit different in the future. I know it's not the most exciting, but I kind of wanted to keep them more or less similar, and I've just been trying out little things different here and there, like the shape of the roofs and, you know, some of the different lighting options, and just trying to play with different things and see what I like. Hopefully in the next phase, we can spice things up and make them look a little bit different. But since they're right next to each other, I didn't want them to be the exact same color. I pretty much just used this watch for the concrete foundations and the walls and everything for the iron tower. And then for this tower, I'm using swatch 2, and everything's quite a bit darker. Well, let's go ahead and start with smelters. Guess I forgot the S. Whoops. So I do need 3. And because I need so few, let's go ahead and just center these. We'll put that one in the very center, and then we'll go ahead and just space them out just a little bit. No need to put them right next to each other. And for these, I need the 212 across 3 machines, 70 and 2/3 each. I love to pair up the steel rotor and the normal stator recipe because then you only need 2 parts, steel pipes and wire. With the iron pipe recipe, I can make all the steel pipes out of just iron, and then using the iron wire recipe, I don't need any copper. I need 152 of these iron ingots to go to the iron pipe recipe, and then 60 will go to wire. I really did consider doing a big load balancer for this, But sometimes it's just really hard when the numbers are just so easy like this. Because for this, all I need is a smart splitter here. We've grouped up the 212, so we'll have 212 going into there. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and place a floor hole here. And a floor hole here. I'm going to say any to the right, overflow to the left, and the middle is none. And now what I can do is grab a Mark 1 lift. The primary is going to be to this one. I'm pretty sure 212 out of the 270 is full enough that I won't have any issues and there won't be any gaps on here. I'll keep an eye on it, but I don't think I'll need to do the 2 different belt speeds on this one. And this will have the remaining 152. Moving on to the constructors. Out of this floor hole, I have 60, and there's the 152. And I'm going to need a total of 3 constructors. And I think I'll need to do a little bit more of the load balancing on this side. So we'll go ahead and place 1 here, and then 2 on this side. And now that I'm looking at, I think I actually want this to be slightly over. Yeah, it's going to have to go there. So this is going to be the 152. I'll just have to redo that down at the bottom. Stretch it out a little bit farther. This right here will be my iron pipes. And it'll be making 38. 152%. Just need that second power shard. I definitely have the room. I could easily just make this 2 machines and save myself the power shards. But I don't think I'm going to run out of power shards. So I am trying to just use as few machines as I really need in this world. And hopefully at the end of the game, my computer will appreciate it. So let's grab the iron wire for the last ones. I need 108 wire, 2 machines, 54 for each one. They'll each intake 30 ingots. Alright, so just like the other one, I'm going to move this one right to the edge of the foundations. Now we get to the fun part, the load balancing for this floor. Let's start off easy with the wire. 60 is going to go to the rotors, 48 will go to the stators. And this just happens to be a 4/9 and 5/9 split, or 4:5 ratio. Let's go ahead and just add a merger. We can go ahead and combine these. So we've got the 108 wire going into the first splitter. And then this is super easy. I just need a splitter. And then we'll put a merger on both sides, but we're going to rotate it so they're facing out. Alright, so here's 1/3, here's 1/3, here's 1/3. Or these are all 3/9, right? So if we take this one and split it all 3 ways, now this one has 4/9. Now this one has 4/9, and we just need to use this last one. So here's my 5, which is 60. Here's my 4, which is 48. For the steel pipes, I'm going to need 18 to go to the stators and 20 to go to the steel rotors. So unfortunately, you can't reduce this fraction by a whole lot more. It's a 9:10 ratio, or 9/19 and 10/19, which probably sounds worse than it is. So just like the 29-way split that I need to do in the last factory, we're just going to do one more and loop that back. So we're just going to do a 20-way split, and one of them will come back to this merger. Since we're only dealing with 38, I can use Mark 1 belts for everything. From the merger, we go ahead and place a splitter, and I'm going to go ahead and give myself the 1 meter gap on pretty much everything, just so I can make sure the right things are connected. Alright, so from here, we split it in half. That's one of the numbers done. That is my 10/19 right there. So with the other half, we're going to do a 10-way split, and then one of them is going to get looped back to this merger. So we go with another splitter, and then this one is going to split it in half. So I'm going to designate this one as 1/2, because I need to group up 9 of them, right? So here's 5. The other 5 are going to go into a merger. And because we're running out of space going this way, we're going to loop back. And I'm going to go ahead and place the merger right here. And so that has the 5. And then with the 5-way splits, we need 2 splitters basically. We're going to split it in half. And then with one of the halves, we're going to make sure we use all 3. So let's get some of these connected. So for sure the merger is going to go into this splitter. And then obviously this splitter is going to go into this one. Let's go ahead and place a merger down to start grouping up this 5 and the 3 that's coming out of here. So I'm going to take a merger and I'm going to place it on top because that's going to make things just a little bit easier. And with this, we're going to go ahead and create a short lift. And then I can connect those two. So let's go ahead and connect those. So now this has the 5 and the 3, so that's my 8. And I just need one more. But we also need to remember, one needs to cycle back to the very beginning. So there's that one. One also needs to cycle back to this merger to complete this 5-way split. So let's go ahead and bring this around to here. So now that 5-way is done. The 20-way is done. And we just need to use this very last one. Go ahead and place that up there. Make our short lift. And send that directly in. So this one right here is my 20. And this one right here has my 18. Only a little bit chaotic, but not that bad, right? Last floor, the assemblers. So let's go ahead and get these spaced out at least somewhat evenly. So the very center one is going to be facing this way, so the outputs are back there, because that's where the wire and the steel pipes are going to come up. I need 3, so the very center one can be in the very center. And then just to kind of get the spacing somewhat even, we'll go ahead and just give the one on either side, just set it right in the middle of its own foundation. This one, however, is going to get spun around the other way. We can go ahead and add a whole bunch of floor holes because these are getting the steel pipes and the wire from the floor below. And everything is 60 items or less, so mark 1 for everything. Let's start with the very last one inside its recipe. As far as motors go, the whole 3 a minute. So I need 6 rotors and 6 stators. There's a couple parts, mainly I think stators and circuit boards are the one that comes to mind that have no use to have in storage. There is nothing in here that uses my build gun that is going to use stators. I have no use for them in storage at all. And so I'm going to make the very center one the stators, and I need 1 power shard because I do need 6. All 6 stators can just go straight from that machine to this machine. However, with the rotors, this is not the recipe I want to use. Need my hard drive library. This is the recipe I want to use. Go back in here, and now we have the steel rotor. And for this, we are going to overclock it to 200% so I can make 10 apiece. This is going to use those 20 steel pipes and the 60 wire. 6 of them will go to the motors, but the other 4 are going to go to my storage. You know what time it is? It's time for another 5-way split. Alright, so just like normal, we're going to start with the merger. Except for this one, I'm going to spin sideways. So we're going to go to the right. And we can go place a belt there. And then I'm going to need a splitter here. And I'm going to go ahead and add 1 more splitter there. Alright, so the merger goes into the splitter. This one splits it in half. So we have 3/5 on one side. And then the 2/5 side is the one that needs part of it looped back. And I can go ahead and add just a merger here. So there's 1/5 and there's the 2/5. This one right here is the 3/5, and that's just going to go straight into that assembler to make my motors. And since I already have a merger here and it's got 1 open port, I might as well just bring the motors around, and we're just going to plug them in right there. And we'll just do another sushi belt. And we'll just run them all the way down to the floor, and then I just need 1 smart splitter to resplit them up between the 2 different storages. And this tower is that easy. I just need to add the miner and get that initial belt plugged in. And then on this floor, now I just need to plug up, A to B and C to D and make sure the right ones are going to the right place. But it's just some lifts and belts. And then I'll do my decorating, we'll take a tour, and then we'll get it turned on. And then we can finally finish phase 2. Welcome to the new Motors and Rotors Tower. let's go on a little tour. So I decided to switch it up, and I went with the old kind of gates, and when you clip them together like this, so normally it would take up the 2 full foundations and it would look like this. And then, well, I guess I need to get far enough away and then come back. There we go. So that's how they would normally open, which is totally fine. And you can do some cool stuff with that. But you can also kind of clip them into each other a little bit, and you can kind of create some cool doors like that. I like it. Let's go ahead and go inside. So when you come inside, we've got our sink. And then I just decided to randomly place a whole bunch of the basic shelving units and some personal storage boxes that are all completely empty. But it made it so the space didn't feel just so empty. And the fact that the crafting bench and the equipment workshop and stuff have lights on them is kind of nice. Interior lighting is one thing that I would love to see just get a little bit more love in the game. I haven't even unlocked the indoor lights because I honestly just don't really like them. And back here is the storage area. So the sushi belt just comes down here, goes into a smart splitter. Rotors go one way, motors go the other way. And then the overflow for both of them will just get grouped together this merger and then go up and over and into the sink. As you can see, the belting really wasn't that bad. It's pretty much just kind of bring it up and then plug it in where it's convenient. So for some things I needed to push them out a little bit because if you plugged in the lift right here, that is too close to be able to do a 90-degree, and then it just doesn't really fit. So just space it out a little bit more, and everything works. And instead of putting fans everywhere, I decided to switch it up, and this tower has a couple extra vents. And then on the outside, you can just come right around over here, and still be able to get to the miner. And then it just got a ladder to be able to get up or down if you need to. But the last step is getting this plugged up. Let's go ahead and get this last phase 2 factory up and running. There's the first automated motor. They're still flickering on or off just a little bit. So I'm just going to give it another minute and then we'll go downstairs and put the throughput monitors on there and make sure everything's looking good. All in all, really didn't take too long. So we've got 3 a minute on the motor line and then 7 a minute on the total line. Since I don't have just a single line for the rotors, this was just the easiest way to do it. And I'm really happy to see that even really low numbers, the throughput monitor hasn't actually been wavering at all. It hasn't flicked between like 2 and 4 and some of the other values, it seems like it'll flicker a lot. But with these, it's been rock steady for over a minute now. Just 3 and 7. Just wanted to make sure that things are getting sorted the appropriate way. And yep, the sushi belt into the smart splitter is working. It's going to take quite a while to fill those up, but I have a feeling that they will eventually fill up, and I won't actually use more than what I'm making here. But I guess we all just get to wait and see. Back at the good old space elevator. As you can see, all of these containers right here. So I decided to build a whole bunch of these parts a quarter of the way around the map. I thought it'd be best just to empty my inventory into storage containers, and then I could just go grab as many as I needed. So that's the smart plating and the wiring, and here's our versatile framework. So that should be all of them, and however many fit on the belt between the smart splitter and the storage container. So this little temporary platform has definitely served its purpose. I think in the next phase, a lot of this area is going to get cleaned up. Speaking of moving on to the next phase, Ada, tell me what I've won. That music is still so loud, so I probably didn't play any of that. But get excited, the jetpack is next. Alright, I take it back. I think that might actually be the loudest sound in the game. Watching the little audio meter, holy cow.
Phase 2 of project assembly completed. Continue as you are, and there should be no issue. For humanity. For fix it.
Goodbye, Phase 2. Hello, Phase 3. Definitely feel like this is where the game can really ramp up. Unlocking oil and trains? Ah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. I don't have a replacement for all of these quite yet, but in the next phase, I'll unlock the Mark IV belts and a couple other things that will really allow me to replace all of this with much better factories. And unlocking the jetpack means I'm going to definitely spend more time doing some exploring. I thought about cleaning up the hub area first, but I think I'm just going to share the world as is, just like how I finished it right here. So this save file will also be on my Google Drive. In the next video, we'll get started working on as many of the milestones as I can knock out. We're going to start cleaning up all this ugly temporary factory mess. So look forward to that. And thanks for watching.